Welcome back to another top secret information episode. If you don't know, especially in blockchain and Web3, the Holy Grail, if you will, for this entire space is scalability. But why? Well, it's pretty it comes up because we all acknowledge that if we want this technology to reach the mainstream, it needs to be able to scale. Otherwise, all the applications that we're building are going to hit a wall. And when that wall gets hit, there's potentially a competitive advantage with ecosystems that figure out scalability versus the ecosystems that don't. For those applications to either move to the ecosystems that have scale, or for new applications to essentially be built on those new architectures with scale and offer the experience that is lacking in the unscalable or the non-scalable architectures, right? So saying that, on today's top secret, we have a lot to get through. First of all, when scalability does come up, it usually comes up in the context of transactions per second, right? And Visa, obviously, we always compare Ethereum and Bitcoin to Visa's TPS. And when we do a transaction with our debit cards and our credit cards, scalability is important there, but the transactions that we're doing are not really super complex. And there's a lot of layers that are built upon our interactions with businesses. And that can, I think, uh, be a value proposition for this technology that our normal cards won't be able to offer, right? Imagine that when you interact with a business, your relationship with the business is on the ledger and it dynamically updates as you interact with it more and more. This means that we can throw away our punch cards for our favorite coffee shop that we get one free for every 10 that we buy. And we can have some representation, whether it be an NFT or a badge or something else that dynamically updates when we do buy that specific item at a coffee shop enough times to get one for free. Anyways, if you visualize the potential use cases, you can see that a simple transaction is, paying for something with your card and having that process and balancing the debits and credits, and that's it. And we're not using any applications, right? We're just paying for something. But with crypto, we can make some very complex transactions. So therefore, we think about things like atomic composability. We think about things like transactions per transaction for wholesale or bulk, use cases. And I wrote this tweet basically saying that transactions per second is an extremely overrated and under nuanced metric. I just explained why, but let me explain a little bit more. Something I've recently discovered is that the way that TPS is calculated can be a bit of misleading or untrue, because in circumstances where you want to do complex transactions and swaps and use pools and liquidity, your TPS rate might be much higher than the actual practicality of the different use cases on a particular blockchain or distributed ledger. So therefore, the TPS metrics that are purported in the media and that investors and VCs are wising up to, they are getting more wise about this. Certain VCs that I've spoken with, at least, have begun to notice this, right? And with maybe because we're early, this was all purported and this is what people go by, and they don't take note of things like transactions per transaction, or how complex the transactions could be and how fast the system is with really complex transactions. But people are getting wise to this. Okay, so I wrote a tweet saying TPS is an extremely overrated and under nuanced metric. Swaps per second properly rated, because I'm saying TPS is overrated. So if you're doing swaps per second, that's better, because at least you have like potential for more complex transactions in like swaps on an application than you do for just sending something to somebody else on a particular network. So I think that that's a properly rated metric, but the rabbit hole always goes deeper, my friends. So then you look at transactions per transactions. Now, in a system like Cardano, where you do have this built-in 20-second latency for new blocks to be produced, you see things that are interesting in that architecture where you can actually do something like this. Now, this is a little bit advanced knowledge, so if you're brand new to this space, I don't know what to tell you, but okay, so imagine that you go on and you want to send 1 million assets to 1 million people, okay? So instead of doing a 1 million different transactions to different addresses and sending one of those million assets to one person, you could actually do what I call bulk transactions. So I've seen this with systems that have this, innate delay as they're using Nakamoto style consensus, and you're propagating a block to a network of nodes and you're waiting for that block to reach, the nodes, 95% of the nodes in 5 seconds, let's just say. And they've actually built in sort of this ability to now send 100 assets to 100 different addresses in one transaction. So really, if you can do that much in one transaction, then it's a form of scalability, right? Because for use cases that you may not want to individually send 1 million transactions or 100 transactions, with a user's public address and sending one asset to each user, you can actually make transactions. And I've done this, I've showcased this on things like Eternal's wallet for Cardano, and a few others allow this capacity, but I still think the use cases for it need to be very strong to prove that this is useful. So anyways, it's like you can actually make a transaction and you can list multiple different addresses, and then you can list exactly what you want to send from your wallet to theirs, if you will. And you can do that all in one transaction. So I think it's properly rated because it's not the most flashy thing, right? It's not the thing that everybody freaks out about and says is the greatest thing in the world, but it still is a form of scalability. And when you're just looking at TPS and you're looking at Nakamoto style consensus protocols for blockchains, you're always going to have a lower transactions per second because there's that built-in latency. So then you look at, and there's other things too, right? Like parallelization and things that I think folks are working on. So anyways, Input Endorsers is a cool paper for Cardano, and how they want to potentially scale and yada yada. So atomic composable complex transactions per transaction is potentially underrated for certain use cases. So then you think about, okay, but if I want to use multiple applications in a single transaction, right? And I also want to maybe do multiple of those transactions that are atomically composable transactions. in the same transaction. So it's just an extension of this, but instead of just sending something to somebody else and doing that 100 times to 100 different users, we're talking about like maybe complex atomic composable transactions in a single transaction. Okay. And I think it's underrated for certain use cases, but there's things about this that also make me want to not say that it's like the holy grail of potential metrics. Okay. So then I said swaps, complex transactions per second, right? While not breaking atomic composability is very underrated. It's a super underrated metric because most systems can't even do this, especially with linear scalability in mind. And even if they can, there comes a point where they start building layers. So you break atomic composability when you go from, let's say, Ethereum to one of Ethereum's side chains or L2s, because you're going through a bridge. And you can't use the applications on that next layer. So the bottleneck becomes Ethereum's scalability. So that's why linear scalability to me is the holy grail. And from my research, it seems like it's been found out, and that's Radix. And that's why I've been looking into it. However, Radix is still a young ecosystem. Okay. So they've done this program called Project Ignition. Okay. You heard Piers maybe talk about it on the podcast I did with Piers, the CEO of RDX Works. Talks about it at the end. And I got to say, I was really impressed. I took some time to test it out and see how it worked on a few different of the dexes. And it's really seamless. It's really smooth. But what I wanted to talk about it with and show you a few examples too is this is a way for Radix to attract liquidity into its young ecosystem and keep it there for a very long time, and of certain tokens that are of the most, I don't know, traded or things that people would want to be able to trade into or trade with the most. So you have Bitcoin, you have USDC, you have Ethereum, you have USDT or Tether, and I don't know if there's anything else. Yeah. Okay. So what they did was they made it so that way people could bridge over using InstaBridge. But again, I've been in Radix for a bit longer, and it was before KuCoin stopped offering XRD. So I ended up just kind of getting some XRD beforehand in a dollar cost average sort of way. And, I still have it. I'm still, grateful for that. And then KuCoin got shut down, things, and there is other bridges. There's a couple other ones that are interesting. So I'm not going to talk about how to bridge over liquidity, but here's the cool part. If you have a lot of Bitcoin or Ethereum or USDC or USDT and you bridge it to Radix, then all you do is lock it up and you pick a amount of time to lock it up. And I want to look into the contracts they're using because the component that comes up in my wallet is a Project Ignition component. So I'm very curious about the means of locking up this liquidity. But it's interesting because what it does is it provides this liquidity to the ecosystem for other dexes to have. And here's the benefit. You maintain your USDC, USDT, Bitcoin, Ethereum, unless somehow, there's a drain while it's locked, right? Or something, which is why I want to look into how they've made sure that this is safe as possible, not just from the impermanent loss standpoint, which seems pretty good looking through some documentation on Project Ignition. Like, I like how they've done that. But from the standpoint of, okay, but what about how most times when we lock up crypto, it's like no longer in our freaking, it's not your keys, not your coins. And that's why smart contract risk and open source, right? And why I like studying the open source sorcerers and different ecosystems that are really good and build stuff that other people build on top of. But, you know, all that beside, here's the benefit. You don't need any XRD, but maybe you want some. So you provide, let's say, $100 worth of Bitcoin, USDC, Tether. You just need that in your Radix wallet. You lock it up. You pick an amount of time. And if it's $100, then if you lock it up for 12 months, you get $20 worth of XRD. So they're giving it out, man. They're just giving it out to us. And I tried it. So I got it. I got 20% of the value of the different things that I locked up in a simple transaction like that. Boom. And then you can look, because I did it for a few. So let's see here. So your total, your locked liquidity, if you will, right? And then you can see there was a bit of a thing around, yeah, so $20 out of, let's see what I did. Okay, that's why it's not $60, it's 79. So you have 139, 102, and 103. And I think this is just a UI bug right here, because when we actually calculate the amount, it should come around these numbers, right? 103, 102, and 139. So over a 12-month period, hopefully I'll get this wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped ETH, wrapped USDC back, right? I think we will, but I'm always cautious, which is why I just did this with a low amount, just for the sake of tutorial, okay? So you instantly get this bonus of 1,042 XRD just by locking it up. And I believe there's also other advantages to providing your liquidity too, okay? So it's not even to say that you should go do it, but if you look at the amount of liquidity, let's see if I can find it. Rewards. I think if I go back to Project Ignition. Okay, so if you see the amount of ignition bonuses left, you still see that there's $5,690,000 worth of XRD in XRD bonuses left, okay? So, and then depending on where you do it, you might get plus bonus caviar, airdrops, or whatever else. But what this has done is it's made quite a bit of liquidity come to Radix all of a sudden. And folks are getting XRD, so now they're getting interested in the project. Maybe now they hold it. And when you have linear scalability figured out, you don't need scale till you can scale. So that means you need enough throughput to scale. And right now, before they add this additional cross-shard emergent consensus called Cerberus to what they're using now, which is just hot stuff, you don't really need like scalability for a bit longer, because we're still able to do 100 transactions per second or complex transaction per second or whatever. And we're not even really there yet on Radix to require us to scale more. So I thought from a strategic standpoint, it's pretty interesting. If you look here, it says 10 million plus liquidity program offering equal XRD matching, upfront bonuses, trading rewards, and loss protection. So there is some loss protection there. So I guess my questions around smart contract risk don't really matter. For USDC, USDT, wrapped Bitcoin, and ETH holders, and I guess that's why they're capping it, because then they can ensure the loss by just having a reserve of liquidity to pay back whatever is lost. And then it says earn and launch, add liquidity, support Radix and Caviar 9, and snag lucrative XRD rewards with low risk. Fuel the ecosystem's growth and rocket your earnings. Impermanent loss safeguard. The program protects liquidity providers from losses, guaranteeing up to 4 times the value increase of assets versus XRD, with extended protection for more significant disparities. Okay, so let's see. You can go and look at these sort of docs here, and you can kind of see exactly what's going on with the bridges. For example, bridging with InstaBridge and getting KYC'd if you agree with that to participate in this InstaBridge, you kind of need InstaPass. So it is kind of what it is. And then bridging with KeyRock OTC, or you can do, I think there's another bridge too that I remember using. It's like Rocket Bridge or something. But anyways, it was good. It was a good experience though for me, and there was no KYC, so I don't know. But with an ecosystem that wants scalability, you also need the things that you need first. And some of those things might be a great user experience or a very safe user experience. So this is what I like about Radix the most. Okay, we have a transaction manifest that for most transactions, unless it's a really complex transaction, shows us in the UI exactly what's going to happen in a very human readable way. And if it's a very complex transaction, it goes through the steps of the transaction in code that's still human readable and is way better than just a bit string that we see in other platforms like Ethereum. Okay, so let's just do this real quick. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go, all right, so what would this be? 82. Let's just go with let's just go with like $20, dude. All right, I don't know if I can. 82. Can I go this way? Okay, and why don't we just go Team Orange for a minute? Okay. Bitcoin. Okay. So obviously I'm suffering some kind of deal here. Wonder why. Just needs more liquidity. I think people are buying up Bitcoin from this DEX and not bridging Bitcoin like I'm about to do, which doesn't increase the liquidity, if you know what I mean. So, you know, it is what it is. Let's just see if I can do. Okay, I guess I can't. So we will suffer this impermanent loss. BTC. Oh, perfect. XWBTC. So this is better because before I was just doing wrapped, and then now I want to do XWBTC. So I'm going to do 400. So I guess there was I thought that the wrapped one was the XWBTC, but I guess that was actually just wrapped Bitcoin, which makes sense why I would suffer a little bit of price difference. All right. So what do we want to do here? I'm going to pull up the transaction. And I turned on my receiving for different tokens or airdrops, or if you will. Am I signed in? Okay. So if you look at this transaction here, you're gonna, let me just show you. I want to show you this one piece here. Okay, so there it is, the transaction. It looks all nice and smooth. I can see exactly what's going in and out. I'm using caviar plus one unknown component. So I'm just gonna sign it and not set any guarantees or anything. And then it's done. So it's very quick already. So you don't need scale until it can scale. And then even if it goes wrong, like hold on, let me try to, okay. I'm gonna swap it again because the transaction did fail. So let's see. Okay, sorry. So now we'll see if it goes through. And then it looks like it went through. Okay, perfect. So even if it fails, it's like, okay, because the transaction will only go through if it can go through, right? And now I have this extra BTC. So let's plug that into Project Ignition. Let's go over here. Let's go wrapped. Let's go boom. Let's do, I guess, 12 months. And then you see it says 79.50 XRD. Let me just check my balance on this test account that I set up to make sure. So what do we want to do here? I guess we'll just duplicate this site. We'll go to trade, go to swap, go XRD. So 798 is what I currently have. So let's see if this works the way that I think it does. So I think I'll get this immediately. And it's going to be 20%, 79 XRD for just locking it up. So this is going to be $5.43, right? So now I'm just going to hit ignite now. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can show you this. So it's a little bit bigger. Do you see that project ignition sort of component? When I look at the project ignition component, it looks like this, okay, which is kind of interesting. And it says that it's available for Caviar 9, OC Swap, and DeFi Plaza. So, okay, so let me exit out of that. So we're gonna exit, or yeah, I'm gonna exit out of that. And then I'm just gonna sign this transaction. And when it says depositing to, right? You see how it says I'm gonna get a amount of XRD just for depositing it right away. So if people bridge their Bitcoin, they want exposure to XRD, they lock it up for 12 months. They make sure they do their due diligence if they want to lock something up for 12 months or whatever. And they immediately get a 20% bonus back of XRD. And the transaction fee on this is pretty high. It's going to be 6.32 XRD. But that's only high in comparison to what it usually is, which is like 6 cents, because it's only like 6 times the amount that it usually is, or 5 times the amount that it usually is. So it's like 40 cents, if you will. And it's because I'm doing all of this stuff, right? I'm having a very complex transaction here, if you think about it. I'm sending some assets from my account. I'm asking Project Ignition to lock them up. I'm getting some back, a 20% bonus, all in one transaction, and it's still pretty cheap. It's only 6.3 XRD, right? So you do 6.3 XRD times whatever XRD's price is, which is 6 cents, and you come out with whatever that equals. And it's kind of like, you know, that's okay. So we're going to say, okay, fine, sure, Project Ignition, we'll do it. I'll do a little bit of a biometric face signing for that transaction because that's what the Radix wallet has enabled. I don't know if you've ever used a wallet that does that, but that's what we get on Radix. And I'm only saying this because when it comes to Radix, right, in the Holy Grail of scalability, and then we go back, let's see. Okay. So now I'm just going to refresh. And I should get that back pretty soon here. Okay, perfect. So I got it back on my wallet. Let's see if I can get it back yet on this browser. So let's go here. Let's go to trade. Let's exit out of this for a second. Okay, you see that? Boom. I just got the 20% bonus like that right away. And you can do this on a few different dexes, and it makes sense because now this liquidity can be kind of shared on these different dexes and within the ecosystem due to the composability of Radix. And this is what I love about this architecture. There's no walled gardens. So very good stuff, in my opinion, for an early ecosystem to attract liquidity. Obviously, they can't just buy users. So this is a good way to do it. It gets people involved. It gets people in this asset with a very low market cap that has already accomplished the Holy Grail of this space, which is achieving scalability, though it doesn't need it yet. So while we in the ecosystem design and build dApps and products for people to use, right, that then will show its potential, and that it's not just a scalable architecture, but it actually is a composable one too, and it allows for a lot of user and dev experience upgrades to the standard while you wait for people to actually use this thing. You don't need scale until you need scale. So this is a great way to first attract liquidity and make things more, I think, just fluid or liquid. Also get people involved in holding the asset from a strategic standpoint. So that's what I'll say about that. I'm only using Caviar 9 as an example. You can do it over here on OCSwap too. I was playing around with theirs. I won't go through theirs today, but OCSwap as well. And I'm only doing this to talk about the strategy, right? Because if Bitcoin increases in price by the time that you unlock your liquidity, they have a up to 4 times, I think, against XRD and permanent loss prevention. And after up to 4 times, I feel like it's gonna be okay, guys. Like if the market swings that much, that you have that much in permanent loss, right? If we go through the math, it seems like a pretty stable way to do this. Obviously, the coins are not stable, and there can always be things that I don't know about that could happen, but I'm very impressed with this, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that you should go lock up your liquidity, or you shouldn't. That's up to you. What I am trying to do, though, is showcase that this architecture and its different layers in the stack are now pursuing a push. They've figured out the Holy Grail, and now they really need to prove its value in the other ways that other ecosystems have. Okay. But in my opinion, what really matters is security, because there's a lot of folks that will make money in crypto and are not part of these ecosystems because they've mastered timing, and they don't really care. So it's not like they're holding coins for 4 years on an exchange. They're buying low in the bear markets. They're doing research enough to know what to buy, and then they're just selling at the top. And maybe they sell into stable coins, maybe they take it back into the banks. But either way, it's not like they're using dApps. It's not like they're in these ecosystems. It's not like they're holding all their funds for 4 to 8 years in the same exact wallet, and they're not exposed in Ethereum to things like wallet drains because they're not really using dApps. They're not NFT collectors. So for them, this is something that they might not participate in. But for a lot of folks that, or they might, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. But for a lot of folks that are using things, and if you look at Radix's security, this project ignition security, this could be a really safe way to do something. And hopefully I'm not historically wrong, right? Like something crazy happens, but it might, I'm not saying it won't. So I'm just trying to articulate this seems like a very safe way to participate in locking up liquidity into a new ecosystem that looks really good with assets that are highly traded, Bitcoin, Ethereum, stable coins, and getting an immediate bonus of XRD. So that's all I'll say there. Okay. So a couple of things I want to mention, guys, is I'm probably going to do less no BS Radix research Twitter spaces. I'm not at the point anymore where I'm gathering intel. I feel like I understand things really well. So now I think I want more time back to talk about different subjects, right? And I'll talk about this later on in the video in my plans, but I'm still going to do no BS Radix research spaces up until Zion. I just might do them once a month, okay? And I might do a little bit more to make the spaces a bit more fun and engaging and do them less often. And what I might do, okay, is I might do the because I've set up a YouTube channel, and I might do something where I talk about what we can use in Radix today. I'm not saying that you can make passive income on my thumbnails. I'm not saying that you're going to make money. Because everybody will say it, but it doesn't mean that it's always going to be true. And I think the better and more mature approach to covering dApps is going to be simply saying, here's what we can do today on Radix. And as new dApps are created, new dApps come about, I think it will give me a chance to selectively pick some to talk about. So this site is where you can find new dApps that are Babylon ready on Radix to go try out and see what they offer today and their uniqueness, right? So I'm gonna go grab a coffee and I'll be right back, guys. But I just wanted to start this video now, and I'll be back in a little bit, and we'll talk about some. So there's certain dApps that really showcase the points at the beginning. And I'll show you a couple right now, but when it comes to this TPS stuff, right? But all I'm saying, and for people listening to the podcast, this will be one that you're going to want to actually watch this video. Otherwise, you might not know what I'm talking about. But things that already exist that are, there to check out at least, or just like play around with, but not financial advice. Shard space is cool. I like going on there to check out my entire portfolio. If you need to move stuff around and configure it, instead of doing everything in your transaction manifest or on the wallet, Shard space allows you to send, stake, swap pretty easily, trade, obviously. I was clicking on the ecosystem page though, and that was kind of fun because when you log into ShardSpace, you get a bunch of different articles. And I was just reading some of them from Crypto Panic. And I guess they just aggregate articles from Crypto Panic. But even in the mornings and stuff, I just go on there and I just check out what's going on in the broader crypto world. For example, commodity-backed tokens surpassed 1.1 billion market cap, gold most popular. And this is kind of with PAX and, Tether Gold and some other things. But anyways, I go on there in the morning. I just check out what the heck is going on. So you can do that. It's cool though. It's nice because you have everything there. So shout out to Avant. He comes to our spaces, the No BS Radix research spaces, and he's a wicked smart guy. I like how his team has designed this place though for us to hang out, look at what's going on, and then aggregate these articles from Crypto Panic and look at what the heck is happening with our dApps and such. Trove is another very unique, interesting dApp. It allows us to create offers that contain maybe a request for a certain token that could be NFT or fungible, and another token that could be NFT or fungible, but also offer up an NFT or fungible token and just really design what we're offering that we can market and say, hey, I'm offering a few abandoned scorpions and 1,000 caviar tokens for like however many, like 40,000 XRD, right? And then we can say, hey, does anybody have this and want some more XRD? Can do that. I think when NFTs become backed by physical assets, or when they're tied to physical assets, this kind of stuff is really cool. You have some lending protocols. You have WEFT, obviously, where you can, check out their borrowing APR, their lend APR, so on and so forth. LSUs, right? XUSDC. So those are a couple. Okay. So like I mentioned, guys, I think I'm gonna tone down the No BS Radix research episodes from every single week. Right? We had 45 people tune in, and it was good. And I posted a bunch of intel. I had a great conversation there with a guy named Flay the Fox. He was a pretty cool dude. And it's just we've done it, man. We've done all the research like over the last 20 episodes over enough time, and they've figured out the Holy Grail. Now it's about what can we do on Radix that's different than other places. So that's why I might start, over the next year or whatever, making specific DApp videos, if you will. And what did I say? I might do more specific spaces on specific topics with specific dApps even, or just impromptu spaces with certain dApps. I might do some more specific spaces. I like doing spaces. It doesn't just all have to be crypto. So yeah, I think I'm going to investigate a few rabbit holes that I put to the side in immersive tech. I call this era the age of infrastructure for metaverse, immersive tech, blockchain, DLT, and artificial intelligence. And all that stuff is creating Web3 as we will know it. So there's a few things I put on the side. I do think Radix has found the end game of crypto, and it's now about the execution of that end game when they do need the scale. And it's also about the ecosystem growth in the meantime. So yeah, man, I'm pretty hopeful for these guys, and we'll see what happens. There's also some things I'm watching in different ecosystems on how they're going to maybe replicate linear scalability with other architectures. There's a lot of confidence, but I don't know if it will work or how long it will take. They might be 5 years behind Radix, even if they can figure things out. So even with adaptive governance. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch. But do they need the scale? No, they don't. So they can keep growing their ecosystem and do some minor layer one scaling and off-chain scaling solutions. And probably if people don't discover Radix or don't know it's a thing, they might get most of the market. And then when scalability is needed, maybe 5 years time for development and figuring out how to linearly scale, they're going to be fine. I don't know. I do think Radix needs to make a push over the next 5 years while they have this huge advantage, right? And grow their ecosystem and figure out some use cases and implement those use cases into applications on their protocol for it to potentially succeed. And I don't want to try to, it could be a chimera, right? Do you know what that is? A chimera is like a delusional dream that someone says that leads people astray. I don't want to do that. I don't want people that watch my content to be led astray. I do feel very good about what Radix offers, and I feel really good about talking about it, but it's still very early. So that's why I like to be conservative as well, and we don't know what the future is. So TPS tweet we covered, project initiation we covered. I plan to get involved a little bit more in the Cassandra testing too. You know, I just downloaded Telegram. So Fly the Fox continues to tell me to down. I used to have it. I used to like I started my crypto journey on Telegram. Had way too many things, just said screw it. Nobody was using Telegram in Cardano. So then I started using Discord. Now Discord, I'm like, screw it. And now I'm going back to Telegram to join the Radix Telegram. And the Cassandra tests will eventually be open for people to supply their compute. So I think I'm going to figure out how to download a file, maybe supply my compute, not become a validator. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to be a validator. I'm just saying I want to go through the process of what it would be like to be a validator, maybe talk about that on videos. So I'll get some time back from not doing so many Nbsrr research spaces to do some more stuff like that. That would be really cool and expand my horizons. Yeah, no BS Radix research spaces. I'm still gonna do up till Giant, probably once a month with more prep. I have a few other spaces I want to start again that I used to do. So it's all part of the master plan. Okay, it's all part of the master plan. What else? I also don't see a point, okay, in like just YouTubing and making podcasts with every single crypto founder. I don't want to be this I don't want to go the track of what I think Altcoin Daily or some of these other podcasters are doing, where they just interview all the biggest ecosystem founders. And because to me, you need like linear scalability is the most interesting thing. And if these other ecosystems are behind in that, as well as user experience, potentially developer experience, then why would I want to like I'll pay attention to what they do and I'll watch what other, interviews are like from other podcasters, but there's more things in the world than just blockchain that tie into how Web3 will evolve. So that's kind of how I see it. Okay, TikTok. Why did I put that there? I posted a TikTok today. Maybe I'll tweet it before this. And I'm using my X account whenever I have some interesting thoughts to post those quotes and things that I just think are philosophically interesting ways to view things. So I made a TikTok after, like, usually what I do is I'll post something and then a few days later, if I want to remember it while I'm in a walk or a hike, I'll just post it. Pretty random. Okay, what else? Oh, you know what? We do have a few more things. Okay, so I mentioned this in the last No BS Rats research space, but this was a great podcast to understand the nuances that go into Cerberus and how it plans to scale, and Dan Hughes is like been here, man. He's not new. He's not new to the space. He's an OG of OGs, and he communicates consensus better than anyone, in my opinion. But he also explains his own consensus algorithm better than anybody that I've heard explain theirs in terms of founders of projects. But I don't even mean that. I just mean like talking about when something like Solana prioritizes, and he didn't say this, I don't think, but I'm sure if he said it, he would be great at explaining it. Something like Solana, for example, kind of prioritizes safety, right? So you don't have things that maybe would create forks, or you don't have longest chain rule, and you don't have to sort all that stuff out. So so nothing bad happens with safety, and with liveness, eventually something good will happen, right? So like Solana prioritizes liveness, and Solana prioritizes safety, and Bitcoin prioritizes liveness, just based on how the architectures are, right? Because with liveness, you may have longest chain rule, but then a new height is discovered that actually is like stronger, like strongest chain rule. That then the rest of the entire nodes will say, okay, you know what, we're going to go with that chain, right? So eventually something good will happen, but you can keep using the system. Whereas Solana, nothing bad will happen, right? But, you know, if it does, or not something bad, but it will sometimes kind of shut down, right? To make sure that nothing bad happens. So what else is going on here? Oh, okay. So the Logan one was very good for me. I really enjoyed this one because this one goes into all these different things, like when they talk about, you know, just having extra witnesses to these cross shard transactions that are randomly picked. They also talk about the added security benefit of cross shard, like atomic committed transactions, because you're using all the validators in 2 or more shards when you do cross shard consensus. So you actually gain an extra security benefit that normal sharded networks don't gain. There's a bunch of stuff, man. It's really good. This was also really good by Vanessa. Shout out to Vanessa too. And she checked out my last video where I covered her interview with Matthew Hein. So this was an awesome, again, you get to hear Dan's origin story that flows into talking about you know, Byzantine's generals problem a little bit. And it's funny because we've made a few videos recently on Byzantine's general problem where we actually pull up the castle and you actually see, you know, the different generals and the problem to perform consensus. So it's pretty fresh on lots of your minds. So this will be a good one for folks that watch this channel. What else did they go over that was kind of interesting? They go over things that I think are more digestible than the Logan podcast. This to me felt like a very good podcast for both people that are like maybe newer to the technical sides of the space, but also more advanced, because you do get a little bit of both. And you do hear a lot on consensus. It wasn't like the House of Chimera, or what was it? Oh, his thing is chimera. So that's the word I was looking for, which is like like a dream. I don't know why. Oh, okay. He's using it in the other context for like chimeras, like the, you know, when you make a creature alive from multiple creatures, I think. But there is also a definition for chimera that is sort of like when somebody gives people a dream that's a delusional dream. So I wasn't saying that because of this, but in the House of Chimera, this was super digestible of a space. You got to hear more on the dev experience, the user experience from Dan, the founder of Radix, and why they went the way that they did. Less consensus than the Vanessa one. So I suggest watching them all. And I think I spelled Vanessa with wrong there, but it's okay. Sorry, Vanessa, if you're watching. So those were the 3 that I would suggest people look into to understand Dan, his viewpoints on the world, uh, just like consensus better, all this stuff, you know, is a lot. It was good though, man. It was pretty good. So we had some comments here. So let's see. This was from my last top secret video. So Guilherme, sorry, I'm probably butchering that. Guilherme said, great content. I'm interested in reading the book. So the book is called Starfish and the Spider. Everyone that watches my content needs to read that book or get the Audible book. Okay, please. You won't regret it. You will love that book. And then to Costa Crypto. So I didn't know about that, and I still need to check it out. So I'll just say that. So anyways, it seems interesting. I read after you mentioned your reflection on a more advanced consensus mechanism overlaying. So he got this, he misheard me there because I didn't say overlaying a different consensus mechanism. I said overlaying a governance framework, okay? And we talked about this in the comments, you know, I let him know, because with linear scalability, if Radix already has it figured out, now they're working on dev, user experience, and what I call validator experience, you know? So more people can participate, but more people will want to. And there's one other thing, which is governance. So I've talked to Dan before on a video or a space, and in the space I talked to Dan on, he thinks that it'll be easier to develop the linear scalability piece, the dev experience, the user experience, and overlay a governance framework than it would be for folks that just have the governance framework and have no linear scalability, not the best user experience, but very decentralized maybe, to re-architect the linear scalability. So that's why I mentioned the overlaying of the governance framework. And when I talk about aggregation, there's another concept, but I don't know exactly what you meant there, Guillermo. But yeah, he just misheard me, because Guillermo and some people on the channel that watch the content on the channel aren't, they're from different parts of the world. I've looked at my analytics. I don't have all US people. I have people from all over. It's pretty weird. Or it's cool. Like I think that's cool. But so there might have been a misunderstanding there between consensus and governance, just in the translation of it all. So anyways, there was another interesting thing though that I thought was kind of cool. So Guillermo went and started watching the top secrets from episode 1. And I mean, no pressure to watch them all, okay? Because I've evolved my thinking a lot since I first started doing the top secrets. And I'll continue to. Top secret information is basically letting you folks know what I'm doing on multiple platforms, what I'm researching on multiple platforms, and what I find connects to past research. So that's why we started this particular, video. I have another YouTube channel that I wanted to get set up by the middle of this year for Radix specific content. I have that set up. I'm just chilling now before I start producing content on it. It's called No BS Radix Research YouTube channel or whatever. But anyways, I'm still thinking about that. But I definitely want to hear your feedback on this book if you guys read it, or Guillermo if you guys read it, because that was really good. Last thing I'll say is we have Hermes with 2. I have to watch these, Hermes, if you're watching. He sent me one that was, when was this? From 2020. And I'm going to watch this, Hermes, and I'll let you know probably at the next top secret what I thought. But Hermes has so much OG intel that it's pretty ridiculous. And usually I get fired up when I watch the OG intel on Radix. But anyways, there's another one that was a Twitch stream that Hermes sent me, The Right Way, Crypto and Radix, from 3 years ago. And Dan looks like he's got like my hair length. Like, so this is awesome. I can't wait to watch these guys. But those are those. And if you're listening on the podcast, I'm showing these on screen, so feel free to check them out. And that's kind of it for today's top secret, I think, right? Yeah, I guess that's it. So remember, folks, keep everything that I told you in this, whatever you want to call it, top secret. Peace.